Have you ever noticed your dog suddenly becoming overprotective? Maybe they started standing between you and strangers. Maybe they follow you more closely than before. Maybe they stare at people a little too carefully, or refuse to leave your side when something feels off. At first it might seem cute, loyal even, but sometimes it can feel strangely intense. And the truth is, when your dog suddenly becomes more protective, there's usually a reason behind it. Because dogs almost never change behavior randomly. If your dog starts guarding you more than usual, their instincts are reacting to something. Something they noticed, something they felt, or something emotionally shifted between the two of you without you even realizing it. And once you understand the real reasons behind this behavior, you'll start seeing your dog very differently, especially after the final reason, because that one explains why some dogs become fiercely protective over the people they love most. First, your dog may think you're emotionally vulnerable right now. Dogs are unbelievably sensitive to human emotions, far more than most people understand. Your dog notices changes in your body language, your voice, your routines, even your smell. That means when you're stressed, anxious, heartbroken, sick, emotionally exhausted, or mentally overwhelmed, your dog often knows before anyone else does. And here's what's fascinating. Dogs don't just observe emotional changes, they react to them. That's why many dogs suddenly become clingier during difficult periods in their owner's life. Breakups, depression, stress, illness, loneliness. Your dog may not understand the exact problem, but they absolutely understand that something feels different about you. And once their brain detects vulnerability, their protective instincts often activate automatically. That's why your dog may suddenly start sleeping closer to you, watching doors more carefully, following you from room to room, or becoming suspicious around unfamiliar people. To them, this isn't overreacting, it's protection. And honestly, once you realize your dog has been emotionally studying you this whole time, it becomes almost impossible not to feel deeply connected to them. But emotional protection is only part of the story. Sometimes your dog becomes overprotective because they believe they're responsible for your safety. In your world, your dog is a pet. In your dog's world, you are family, pack, responsibility. Dogs evolved from animals that survived through social cooperation. Protecting vulnerable members of the group increased survival. That instinct still exists, which means many dogs naturally feel responsible for watching over the people they trust most. And this becomes especially obvious in environments they consider uncertain or unpredictable. That's why some dogs suddenly become alert around strangers approaching your house, or when someone walks too close to you outside, or when they hear unusual noises at night. They immediately shift into observation mode. You'll notice it in their posture first. The ears rise, the body stiffens slightly, the eyes lock onto movement. Sometimes they quietly place themselves between you and the unfamiliar person without making a sound at all. That silent positioning, that's one of the clearest protective behaviors dogs show. And the craziest part is, many dogs don't even realize they're doing it consciously. It's instinctive. But here's where things get really interesting. Sometimes dogs become overprotective because they've learned that you depend on them emotionally. Think about how often people talk to their dogs. You tell them about your day. You hug them when you're sad. You sit beside them when you feel alone. You seek comfort from them constantly without even noticing it. And over time, your dog starts understanding something important. Their presence changes your emotional state. That means your dog may begin seeing themselves as one of your emotional protectors. Not just physically, emotionally. That's why some dogs become incredibly attentive when their owner cries. They move closer, lick hands, rest their head on you, refuse to leave your side. And once that emotional bond strengthens enough, some dogs begin acting more protective in everyday life too. Almost like they've assigned themselves a permanent job. Keep this human safe. But not every protective dog behavior comes from confidence. Sometimes it actually comes from fear. And this is the part most owners misunderstand completely. A dog that suddenly becomes aggressive around strangers isn't always trying to dominate the situation. Sometimes they're scared of losing the person they're attached to. Especially rescue dogs, dogs with abandonment trauma, or dogs who experienced instability early in life. For emotionally insecure dogs, attachment can become extremely intense. You stop becoming someone they love. You become their entire sense of safety. And when another person, animal, or situation feels unpredictable, the dog may respond protectively because they fear losing control of what makes them feel secure. That's why some dogs become overprotective specifically around certain individuals, not because the person is dangerous, but because the dog feels uncertain, and uncertainty creates defensive behavior. This is also why dogs often behave differently depending on your reaction to someone. If you're tense around a person, your dog notices. If your body language changes, your dog notices. If your voice sounds nervous or uncomfortable, your dog notices. Dogs constantly read emotional energy from humans. In fact, many behaviorists believe dogs rely more on body language and emotional tone than words themselves. So if your dog suddenly acts protective around someone, sometimes they're reacting to signals you unconsciously gave off first. And honestly, that explains a lot of situations people find mysterious. But there's another reason some dogs become extremely protective that most owners never think about. Your dog may believe your home is their territory to defend. To humans, your house is property. To your dog, it's a protected zone. That's why many dogs behave completely differently inside the home versus outside. A friendly, relaxed dog at the park may suddenly become alert and territorial when someone approaches the front door, because context matters. Inside the home, your dog feels responsible for monitoring the environment. You'll notice this especially at night. Dogs often patrol windows, react to small noises, listen carefully to footsteps outside, or sleep facing entrances and hallways. Even while resting, part of their brain stays alert, and when they care deeply about the humans inside that environment, the protective behavior becomes even stronger. But here's the emotional part almost nobody talks about. Sometimes your dog becomes overprotective simply because their attachment to you deepened over time. Not suddenly, gradually. Through routines, through trust, through years of shared moments. Every walk together, every greeting at the door, every quiet night on the couch, every moment where you comforted them, or they comforted you. Those experiences build emotional bonds stronger than most people realize, and eventually your dog stops seeing protection as a choice. It becomes part of loving you. That's why older dogs often become more emotionally attached and protective than younger dogs. The longer the relationship lasts, the deeper the emotional connection becomes. And honestly, this final reason changes everything. Sometimes your dog becomes overprotective because they know your routine so well that even small changes feel important. Dogs memorize patterns constantly. The time you wake up, the way you walk when you're healthy versus tired, the sounds you make when stressed, the people you normally trust, the routines that feel normal. So when something changes unexpectedly, your dog notices immediately, and uncertainty triggers observation. Observation triggers alertness, and alertness can turn into protectiveness. That's why some dogs become unusually attached when their owner gets sick, or pregnant, or emotionally distant, or starts bringing unfamiliar people around more often. The dog senses disruption in the normal emotional environment, and their instinct says, pay attention, stay close, protect. But beneath all these reasons, emotional sensitivity, territory, attachment, instinct, fear, routine, there's one simple truth connecting all of them. Your dog cares about you more than you probably realize, much more. To your dog, you are not just the person who fills the food bowl. You are safety, routine, comfort, emotional stability, home. And when something threatens that feeling, even slightly, many dogs naturally respond by becoming protective. Not because they're trying to control you, not because they're bad, not because they suddenly changed personality overnight, but because somewhere deep in their instincts and emotions, they decided you were worth protecting. And honestly, that's one of the purest forms of loyalty an animal can give.